to this SMB virtual summit session. This is Chuck Ingram. I'm with CongruentX. I am honored today to be joined by an author, an executive, an amazing servant leader, and possibly the best office background that we will see in the next 3 weeks. My good friend, JC Quintana. JC is, and I'm going to read this because I believe it. He's a fervent believer in the importance of winning and keeping customers, employees, and business partners through similar relationship building strategies. His impressive resume, and it is, I've been with him for a few of these things, includes entrepreneurial and senior executive roles over global, multi-regional, multicultural initiatives in customer experience, customer relationship management, human capital, channel alliance programs for companies that have included DHL, Sage, ADP, and Hewlett-Packard. JC is the author of Speaking Frankly About Customer Relationship Management and Serious Relationships, of which I have copies here of both. I've read them both, and actually been influenced especially by this one and some of my business endeavors. And JC is also a huge fan of, like I am, of Cheetos.
The official Cheetoholics.
Yeah, and you know what? All jokes aside, his framework that he's come up with in this, especially the Serious Relationships book, and I know there's a newer cover. I have an older copy, and you can show the. Yeah, this is actually taught at 5 universities. I think that's right, JC. So companies can send their team members to learn about learn about serious business relationships, and this is taught, and they get certification in it at 5 universities.
Yeah, that's right. We started about 3 years ago back at Rutgers University in New Jersey. Mm-hmm. And then University of South Florida picked up the program, and now we moved over to University of Richmond, Missouri State, and University of California, Irvine, with 4 additional universities that are going to launch the customer and employee experience program by the end of the year, including virtual online classes. So it's been a lot of work, a lot of fun. Yeah.
That is too cool. And by the way, he lives in Kennesaw, Georgia, about 20 minutes from where I live. Not that we can go visit each other now.
Right.
The other side of Lake Allatoona, filming location of the Ozarks.
Yeah, big pitch for the cities, right? Greatest places to live in Georgia.
Yeah, that's right. So, JC, for folks who, unlike me, who aren't familiar with some of the content you've built, it seems like a lot of the conversation in the world is about technology. You know, there's an app for this, there's an app for that. You know, we have a new SaaS company, Alexa, Google, you know, all those kinds of things. It feels like that the relationship is being de-emphasized a lot more lately. Can you talk a little bit about serious relationships and how what made you think of that in these times?
Yeah, I think that's a very valid statement. We usually frame it from the point of reference of millennials, right? You kind of hear that millennials are enamored with technology, that they do everything on their mobile phone, and that they're not really interested in the old traditional things, you know, shaking hands, building a relationship, staying with the brand for a long time. But what we kind of see, studying millennials a little closer, is that that's not really true. Millennials do want relationship. They just want it to be more meaningful. They want to spend less time on the road that gets you there, and they embrace technology to get them there a lot faster. So I think it's really a bit of a misunderstanding. And so, yeah, as a result, you're right. We kind of de-emphasize the end result that they're expecting, which is meeting a need, building a relationship with a brand that can fulfill that need. We de-emphasize that in lieu of promoting the technology that helps them get there. much
Mm, mm.
much to our demise, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's funny. Our CEO of the company that we worked at before, and I talked about this a few times. We had invested in working with young people who happened to be millennials, and what I found was it was extremely rewarding because they wanted to know the why. And if they, everything people say about millennials was was different because I felt like that if we talked about the why, every myth was dispelled. Come in early, stay late, work hard, be creative. Everything was awesome. And like you said, yeah, maybe they use technology to get it done, but if they knew the why, they were all over it.
Yeah, exactly. So I like that you started with the relationship thing. I think that's my sort of like my
Mm-hmm.
close to my heart, near and dear thing. And it's because the one thing, regardless of what generation we're talking about. So when you and I started back in CRM, you were back in the Microsoft days, and some of the people listening to this will remember Sales Logics and Goldmine and Act before that and Siebel, right? And now the Microsoft technology that's really coming into the market for a number of years and kind of becoming part of the commonplace of every
Mm-hmm.
business because we use it every day. The relationship aspect of it has stayed consistent. Um, I, I do this little exercise with my students sometimes where I'll say, name the top places where you find silos at a company. So if you say we're a company that's segmented and siloed and we're having problems with building consensus around an effort, go ahead and name the things that you consider to be a silo. And
Mm-hmm.
they'll say sales is in silo and marketing is in silo and support
Mm-hmm.
is in silo, right? And they start talking about these organizations. But what they're really saying deep down is that they are functions that are responsible for meeting the need of the customer,
Mm-hmm.
that are either not viewing the customer from a 365 perspective and are therefore doing different things, having different conversations that could be contradictory to one another when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to talking to the customer. That's really when we say silos. Even though we sometimes talk functional silos, most of the time we mean relationship silos or just really the silos of the people that are managing the relationship with the customer in different ways through different rules, having different results, right? So yes, like you said earlier, the relationship part is the one thing that is consistent regardless of what technology we use. And this generation of millennials is kind of teaching us that yes, number one, the one needs to be met. And because the technology is available to get to those needs faster, they expect you to leverage technology to get to that. But it's not the other way around, right? It's not technology telling them what the need is. It's technology fulfilling a need that they expect to be fulfilled a lot faster than it ever has been expected before.
Mm-hmm. So interesting on especially on the silos. And it's funny too because when you talked about technology, there's science behind relationships driving better business outcomes. Like even I remember when I worked with Malcolm Baldrige award-winning company back in the 80s, and part of the responsibility of that was you had to tell other companies about it. So I knew the PowerPoint by heart. And part of it was that if you had less suppliers, you were more efficient and you made more money. And I think through the CX initiatives that we're going through these days, we're seeing that if you're closer to your customers, you're more profitable and so forth. But it's interesting that the silos seem to be bigger than they used to, and sometimes there's less of an emphasis on relationship these days, unlike our millennial friends are teaching us.
Yeah, that is true. So there is in relationship psychology, there's a term called a social norm, right? We
Mm,
or social script. And so what that term means is that everybody comes to a relationship with certain expectations. So the social script that you bring to a relationship in interpersonal life kind of defines the kind of relationships that you look for and get engaged in, and also the success of that relationship. So let's say, for example, that I come from a very traditional family, mom and dad, and Latin. I'm Puerto Rican, so that kind of a Latino, very family oriented, very close. And I develop a marriage relationship with somebody that brings a completely different social script. At some point, we have to kind of say, okay, let's kind of look at your social script and look at my social script and define what expectations you bring to that relationship and what expectations I bring to that relationship. I bring my needs and you bring your needs. I have certain circumstances behind what my background and what I think about relationships, and you have certain circumstances. I have some specific characteristics that have to do with me, how I look, how I act. So do you. And then there's also certain capacity. So I have abilities that maybe are greater than your abilities, but the same thing with that. And so we kind of take all that and we manage it in a way that helps us decide whether we want to, pursue a relationship or maybe this is not for us. So when it comes to the conversation around silos, I think that we're not really working together as one side of the relationship, assessing what are the needs of the customer on the other side of the relationship. We sometimes are just completely different, disconnected entities within the company that are managing the relationship any way we want, not realizing that the customer is looking at us as one thing, right? They're looking at one company, and people within those companies managing the relationship ideally in a consistent way. And so when we get into technology like CRM, that is supposed to be relationship management, the most important aspects of managing the relationship go out the window. And so silos emerge, and some people do well in building relationships with customers, and those people get ahead. Some people get, kind of behind on the road to building relationship. And then everybody's doing something completely different rather than kind of unifying that same perspective and using a good system that gives us intelligence about the things that I mentioned, right? What are the customer's needs? What are the circumstances? What are the characteristics? And what are the capabilities, so that we can kind of proactively meet those needs, one single organization. Ideally using CRM, right?
Yeah, I definitely would like to break that one down a little bit. There's something though, I think that the folks that are watching this you have taken, like Tim Ferriss does. He teases out what success looks like, kind of from the inside out, and you actually have this foundation for what a successful relationship looks like. Do you think you could talk about that for a minute? And you've touched on it, but the kind of definitions, interested, all those things, because I think that's valuable for people to hear.
Yeah, what people sometimes like to call the marriage counseling of business relationships, right? And it kind of, and I go back to the university setting, which is where we do a lot of this. During after talking theory and talking relationship development and talking about these 7 things, we kind of get together in a room with a design thinking board. We kind of take over half the room and put up the board, and we kind of start breaking down using a questionnaire and asking questions about if the customer was here in front of you, and it was sort of like a marriage counseling kind of a setting, and you as a company together on one side and the company on the other. If you were to evaluate whether the customer is really, from their perspective, getting what they originally signed up to get from you, how would they answer in these 7 areas, right? And that's the framework that you're talking about. We basically say, at a very high level, if need is the most important thing, and the most important thing is that the customer sees that you are, and you also recognize these 3 words, in a way that is functional, easy, and enjoyable, is working with you to fulfill their needs through your company. In these 7 areas, how would they respond? And here's the 7 areas. If I were to ask the customer, How well does your company define expectations, set the right boundaries, and understanding of what the relationship look like, contract expectations, how they work with you, what they're getting out of you in terms of value and things like that? How would they respond?
Mm.
Two, if you were to ask the customer, how well are you meeting their specific personalized needs, right? Based on who they are, their makeup, their characteristics, their geographical needs,
Mm.
their individual needs, even based on geography and culture.
Mm.
How well are you meeting those needs based on that? How would the customer answer? Then
Mm.
we would say, if you were to ask the customer in these things, if they are engaged in co-collaboration to fulfill those needs with your company, how would they respond, right? And that's the engagement component that we so often misunderstand, because we think engagement is things like chat and email and things that are really interactions via communication that do not really represent engagement.
Mm.
Then we kind of move it up a notch and we say, if the customer were here with you and you were to ask them, how well are you fulfilling the responsibilities that you told them you were going to fulfill, how would they respond? And then deeper than that, number five, if you were to say, how accountable are you to doing the right thing and taking ownership when you make mistakes, how would they respond? Then we ask the sixth question, which is, if the customer were to make a decision about you, how transparent do they feel you are in giving
Mm.
information, decisions, things about your company that they need in order to build trust? And then number seven, part of the questionnaire is, how safe does the customer feel in all their interactions with you in every single experience? So if they go to your website, that environment that you've created, do they
Mm.
feel that website is safe, that their
Mm.
privacy is being taken care of? If you're a restaurant and they walk in, how clean do you think they are? So that kind of constitutes the foundation, right, of definition, centricity, engagement, responsibility,
Mm.
accountability, transparency, and the environment. And what that does is it kind of creates a framework with a checklist of things that you can
Mm.
ask the customer and say, how well are we doing in meeting your needs when it comes to
Mm.
building a relationship with you?
It's that. Thank you very much. That's really cool. That a lot of people like myself, I like if I go exercise, I can do pretty good if I run down the street and come back. But if I do a program like CrossFit or P90X or something, it's a that you've laid out a process here, which is really cool. The other thing I like that you said is that you said almost said like a and maybe I misunderstood this part, but almost like a marriage counselor. So it's almost like you listen to what the client is thinking, and then you have your perspective too.
Yeah,
And maybe there's some asks that come out of that to help you, kind of meet in the right place with the client.
yeah, you nailed it. And it's interesting that you made that observation, because it's the one thing that a lot of companies miss, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which it is it's not a one-sided relationship. It
Mm-hmm.
is a two-sided relationship that needs to have equity. So if you walk through the seven things, right, it needs to be equitable for me to say. And here's an example that I use. Back in the days when Amazon first came out,
Mm-hmm.
uh, it was very different, right? Their way of doing business is very different. You and I had been used to going to a store, looking at a pair of shoes, looking
Mm-hmm.
at the color, putting them on, walking around. If your spouse was with you, saying, "Honey, come here. What do you think? How do I look?" And Amazon took us into this environment where we don't physically see or touch what we were buying. They wanted to mail it to us, so there was a risk that maybe the shoe size was different. Zappos kind of did the same thing. And so at some point, both the company, Amazon, and the consumer had to kind of go through those seven things and make a decision that was equitable for both sides.
Mm.
The consumer was saying, okay, I want my shoes. And Amazon was saying, okay, I'll get those shoes to you, but would you mind doing it strictly online so that it is fair and balanced for us to do it online through an e-commerce system that is inexpensive or at least fair to us? And so you as the customer said, okay, you know what? all right, that's good, but you know what? I don't know. How long is this going to take to get these shoes? Oh, well, Amazon says it's going to take 4 days. Okay, well, that's not fair to me, says the consumer. And Amazon says, well, guess what? If you pay me $100 a year and become a Prime member, I can get it to you in 2, maybe 1 day. And so that kind of like equitable discussion back and forth about the definition of that relationship had to happen. Sadly, a lot of companies go out of business when they create an environment where it's very fair for the customer, but and it's fair for the customer. It's great for the corporate entity, but it's not good for the employees that have to work 24 hours a day to meet the primary needs of the customer, right? So it has to be fair and balanced. And you're absolutely right. The 7 things has to be like a relationship and marriage counseling, both sides, understanding what is best for both sides and agreeing whether or not they can forge a relationship that is successful for both, or if not, maybe terminate it or end it or not start to begin with.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I hope folks that listen to this get amazingness out of that. So I one more question on relationships, and then I want to get some thoughts from you on the technology side and how the relationships can help there. So I think we're in a unique time for a lot of reasons, fortunate and unfortunate, but it's interesting, and I made this observation the other day to somebody else, is like besides a 1 or 2 leaders out there, you don't the tendency of leaders right now, you don't see the new Steve Jobs out there that much. There's Elon Musk and a couple other people, but for the most part, the profile of leaders are kind of Simon Sinek. What he talks about is, it's finite. Let's talk about efficiencies and cutting and, kind of the numbers up soon. Are there any advice for folks who are maybe in a big organization or an organization where they're how to influence without being a leader around relationships? Any guidance to how to make a difference around relationships where you work?
Yeah. So I'll answer sort of like, your first comment. I think has a lot of validity. People are sort of becoming very enamored with efficiencies and the technology and all that. But I think most companies sooner or later have to come back to the table and address that we're all in business to fulfill a need for a customer, right? Whether it be physical or psychological or emotional or even spiritual, depending on what business you're in. We're all really in the business of fulfilling the needs of the customer without losing our shirts. And so I think that is probably the most important advice when it comes to, all of us individually as leaders, having one-to-one contact with customers. And it is that, ultimately you need to go back and ask the question, what has changed in the life of the customer that I need to be mindful to, right? And, I'll bring it back to technology and kind of wrap it up full circle. If the technology that I'm using on a daily basis, and it could be anything, let's take CRM, for example, because, we have sort of a CRM focus. But you take CRM, for example, CRM could be a customer interaction application. It could be a customer management. It could be a sales management, a support management application, a marketing management, automation application. It could be a lot of that. But if you leverage CRM to really understand your customer, right? Doing all your due diligence of informing the system with credible, good, timely data about what you're doing with the customer, then you can also leverage the system to go back and say, where can I meet a customer's need today? What has changed in those things I talked about? What has changed in the needs, circumstances, characteristics, or capabilities of the customer or our own that requires us to take an extra minute to go back and reset those relationship expectations with the customer so that they don't on their own make that realization that you're not providing value, you're not meeting the need, and they go get it from somebody else. So that is, I think, a single individual leadership advice that I would give anybody is that at every interaction with your customer, that you're always mindful that needs, circumstances, characteristics, and capabilities change on both sides of the relationship, and you got to keep the customer informed that you're doing something about it proactively.
Awesome. Great stuff.
Yeah.
So that leads to the next question I had in mind. And I heard you say a few things that are really, really cool there. So this touches more on your first book around the sort of the CRM topic and relationship management. So there's CX, there's CEP, there's CM, there's SEP, there's CDPs, there's DMPs, and they're all kind of ish under this CRM umbrella, which has grown from an umbrella. I remember when we started talking about this, it was a $9 billion umbrella just a few years ago, and it's a $50 billion umbrella going into an $80 billion umbrella. And yet I can't find any evidence where it's better than a flip of the coin that people are happy with it. And that's the way it was when it was a $3 billion umbrella. Yeah. I haven't seen any evidence that as the technology's matured and sort of bifurcated even, that the satisfaction has improved. And I heard you say a few things that, like, you didn't say the word, but one was context. But I'd be curious to your thoughts as you've drilled into both topics, CRM and relationships. Why do you think that it's that people aren't happy with it, with the technology?
Yeah, well, I think you work with this every day. Adoption is one of the biggest problems, right? If I'm at work and I am, say, a salesperson, and my manager comes to me and says, you have to use this tool to manage relationships, most salespeople are just going to laugh, right? They're going to say, no, I'm going to use it to enter my opportunities and follow the pipeline, so you are satisfied with me as a sales guy or saleswoman or salesperson. So you're satisfied with me as a manager that I'm meeting my commitments to the company and I'm bringing in new customers and I'm closing at the end of the quarter, right? If I'm a marketing person, CRM all of a sudden becomes a really good tool for managing a large quantity of names to put into campaigns and effectively track them. If I'm a support person, then it's a really great vehicle to write tickets and do all that. And quite frankly, and I know I'm not saying anything that you don't already know, to do those kinds of things, you can use one of 30, 40 technologies that are out there, right? And so that's why I think that for the most part, some of the tools that you and I have been working with on for so many years have stayed stagnant, and people don't want to use it because they've kind of developed their own way to effectively win customers, keep them for life, manage the relationship so that they can meet the secondary need of the company to actually make money and grow and increase revenue. I think that we've had trouble meeting, having the concept and the technology meet, right? To where I can say, I manage relationships in this way. I am managing the customer. I am staying in contact with them. But ultimately, customers love me because they know they can come to me to meet those needs consistently. And by the way, it's easy to do. They get what they need, and it's enjoyable, right? In theory, most of the salespeople that I know that are very successful understand that. Sadly, they're now then being forced to enter that information in a system that is really more concerned with the tactical and the functional and the financial. Why not meet the two, right? Why not create systems that facilitate the salesperson and the marketing person, the support person, to build relationships easier, enabled by technology, rather than having technology force them to do something that is not natural for them. When something's not natural for them to do it, they're going to rebel against it, and we're going to see the adoption problems that we've had for as long as you and I have been doing this, right? The second answer to that is, and you may mention to it, in recent years, we kind of stumbled on a golden nugget of wisdom in the form of customer experience, right? Where when Kerry Bodine and Harley Manning wrote the book Outside In, as Forrester analysts, they kind of discovered, they said, oh, you look at these numbers. People are kind of saying, how do customers stay with us? How do they repeat business? How do they tell other people about us? And it seems that it's more consistent to track the success of that by asking people if we give them what they needed, if we made it easy and enjoyable. Those measurements of success are far, far more accurate than when we're asking, are you satisfied? Did we provide excellent service? A lot of the, the nebulous things that we used to ask people. Why aren't those things now making it into the technology to help us assess if, from the relationship perspective, we are addressing people's needs, and from the level of effort, the experience, if we're meeting those needs or helping people meet those needs in a way that is functional, accessible, and enjoyable. Sadly, and I don't know what we have to do to change this, the technology is not following the need of the customer. We're rather meeting the needs of people from a functional perspective that may not align ultimately with how to build relationships, right? With human beings.
Yeah, it's occurred to me, to your point, that the way that technology has evolved at home is, I won't say the name of it or it'll try to do it. I tell this thing to turn off my lights, or if the weather, I can talk to my house, I can talk to, and I can just get it. It's just there. It's contextual. And I go back to CRM and they tell me there's AI under it, and I believe them, but it's delivered back to me in forms that, they're forms, like the same forms that we had in the late 90s. And I think that there'll be some interesting advancements there that can hopefully deliver context if we focus on the customer and the user, not just the sort of the internal stakeholders.
Absolutely. There is a great methodology that you use as well, the business model generation canvas and methodology. When I look at the canvas, it's interesting to kind of see the 9 things that run a business. And here on the right side of the canvas, you've got what I would say the most important pieces, which are the customer and those customer segments, the need that we're trying to meet, the value proposition, right? And then up here, you've got the customer relationship, right? On the far left side of the canvas, you have things that are revenue, costs, key partnerships, key relationships, resources, right? I see businesses sometimes implement technology and only think about the cost and revenue sides of the canvas and completely forget that out of the 9 aspects of running a business, 2 are functional and 7 are relational, right?
Wow.
And so why would you implement technology with only functional, financial, revenue goals in mind when the majority of your business is ran by managing relationships? Something to think about.
Definitely. On that note, JC, this has been fantastic. I think anybody that sees this will get some great insights from what you talked about. So how can folks get in touch with you to be like me and have a couple of your books and get some of these insights that even helps me start a company and have the company be doing okay?
Yeah. Well, both books are available on Amazon, anywhere that books are sold. So, buying the book online is great. I joke that I have 5 kids, so be mindful of that. I got to support my 5 kids. I'm just kidding. So Amazon is probably the easiest way to do that. There is also if you're not sure about the needs for the book, serious-relationship.com, serious-relationships.com. You can find the book there as well. We give this book out to everyone who takes the course at one of the universities where we teach it. Um, and that's it. I mean, that's two good places to find the book. If you are kind of looking for a way to implement a lot of these relationship concepts into technology like CRM, then the book, Speaking Frankly About Customer Relationship Management, is a great fit. If you're an HR person, talent management, a manager that's kind of figuring out how to improve your relationships with people, whether it be an employee, a customer, a business partner, then the book Serious Relationships is a great book to kind of get. Technology and Function, one book and the other.
That is awesome, JC. Thank you so much for joining us at the SMB Virtual Summit.
Oh, thank you, Chuck. Anytime. Just as much as you said great things about me, I have nothing but amazing things to say about you. Much success with your company.
Oh, thank you so much.